Hey there. Welcome to the Literary Escape Podcast. I'm your host, Becky, and I'm glad you're here today. On the Literary Escape Podcast, we talk about books. We talk about escapes that we can have through our books. And I always have some great book recommendations for you. So, buckle up and let's see where we're going today. Enjoy the show. I have author Kate O'Keefe with me, and she is the author of several series of romantic comedies. She is a USA best-selling author. She is an award-winning author. She is living in New Zealand. So, Kate, welcome to the show.
Hi, Becky.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. I always love meeting new authors, especially if they're not from Florida.
No, I'm definitely not from Florida.
You're definitely not from Florida. So you are in New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah.
And
right
are you from New Zealand or just landed there?
Yes, I'm fifth generation New Zealander. But
really? Wow.
I was actually born in the UK. My father was a professor, and we lived in different countries, including the States, when I was a child. So I did first grade in Boston, Massachusetts. My parents lived in Seattle, and my dad was teaching at one of the universities there. I was in boarding school, but yeah.
Wow.
So I've lived in different countries. I lived in Britain total of 16 years, actually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I went back there as an adult. So
how long have you been back in New Zealand?
I've been back here for 14 years now.
Okay.
So quite some time. This is very much home to me now, and I love being here. So
how did you get into writing?
I've always been a very, very big reader. I've always loved books. I grew up reading, and I have my first degree was in art history and English literature. I loved both. So I always had this passion. I had the example of my father, who was a professor, but he was also published. He worked in business. He was he was a business administration professor, but he had I think it was 11 or 12 books published while he was alive.
Okay.
Yeah, and textbooks as well as other types of books. And so I always had that in my head that it was possible.
Well,
and
not an unusual thing necessarily.
No, and my sister followed in his footsteps, and she's a professor in California, and she writes books as well. So,
that's so cool.
But mine's so different. I write, as you know, I write fun, light,
exactly,
happily ever after fiction. So very, very different. But
needed.
Oh, I think so. I think
needed.
we need that escape, don't we?
We do.
It's great to be challenged at times, but I think it's so much harder to live in our world these days, and having a way to escape is perfect.
I agree.
I do it. I read romantic comedies all the time. I'm addicted.
I love them. I have a book club, and in the book club every month we go to a different destination in our books, and a lot of the women that are in it, they are used to being in a book club that does the heavy books, the meaty discussion type books. And last year I gave them a romantic comedy, and they were all like, wow, that was so fun. And I'm like, yeah.
It's quite a revelation when you realize, because for me, for example, I came from this background where I had a degree in literature, and I was a literary snob. I totally admit that. And I knew it at the time as well, but I would only read the classics or important, like Booker Prize. And I felt like I was bettering myself. And someone handed me a copy of Bridget Jones's Diary. And that revolutionized my reading. I was like, oh my gosh, I can laugh and have fun while I'm reading. I was never a romance reader. I didn't come to it from there. I came to it very much from what was called chick lit, and still is called chick lit, but I know it's kind of a political term these days. But
I like the term chick lit too. So yeah.
I do too. I claim it, as a woman. I call myself
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was at that point I thought, wow, I can enjoy myself reading. And isn't this just like, it was an epiphany moment. And that wasn't the point that I decided to write. I started reading like Sophie Kinsella, Marion Keyes. I started reading the ones that were around at the time. That's when I began to think I could actually do this.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I had excuse me, a child and he was napping that I actually sat down and started doing it. So while he was having
So you waited until the hardest point in your life.
Well, I wanted to use my mind. I wasn't working. I was a full-time mum, and I wanted to do something that would stretch my mind. So I started writing. Then I bought every book I possibly could, and learnt what I could about the craft, and wrote my first book, which was terrible, and then rewrote it again, and just played around. It took me 2 years. Like, it's crazy. I can write a first draft now in about 6 or 8 weeks, but back
Isn't
then
that crazy? Yeah, the first there's you don't even know what you don't know.
Well, no, exactly. And I was one of those people who probably very overly confidently thought, I can do this. There's no, I see other people that, how hard can this be?
And I read a lot, let me tell you, so I can do it.
Yeah, exactly. I read it, I can do it. But no, there's definitely a lot to learn. But it's, for me, making my passion and my hobby into a career has just been just a wonderful journey. And I feel so cool. lucky, so lucky.
And so what was your first published book?
My first published book was called Styling Wellywood. And that is set in New Zealand, in the capital city, Wellington, which was known, at least in New Zealand, as Wellywood, because it's where Peter Jackson, who is the director of Lord of the Rings, a bunch of movies, and he was based, and he had like a lot of stars were living in Wellington at the time and filming these movies, and so they called themselves, and I was living
Wellywood. I love that.
So, Wellywood, yeah. So that was my first book that was initially really terrible, that I rewrote, and I joined the Romance Writers of New Zealand, as well, which is like Romance Writers of America, but it's in New Zealand. And
is that a big community? Are there a lot of writers in New Zealand?
Yeah, there are surprisingly a lot of writers in New Zealand.
That's awesome.
Even where I live now, I live in Hawke's Bay, which is a small kind of provincial area in the North Island of New Zealand. There are a lot of people writing here as well. Some published, some not. So yeah, it's awesome. It's interesting. Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it's been a really supportive community to be a part of, and I feel like it's really useful. Because it's such a solitary pursuit to be a writer.
It is.
And I'm an extrovert. So, and it's an inherently introverted thing to do.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's nice to be part of a community of whatever it is you do. And
it is, absolutely. Yeah. And I've in fact become part of a wider community of authors all over the world through social media.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't be where I am now without them, because they're so supportive. And just I don't know, we formed this, and community is the best way. It's like, I mean, people say it's your tribe. My tribe is very much online these days. I have been to RWA conferences. I had a couple of books that were up for an award in LA, and I went for that, and I've just met these people, and it's been wonderful. I don't know that many industries where people who are technically your competition are so
become good friends. I mean,
they become friends, and they become very much part of your support network. So.
Well, and one of the things I love about authors is it's not either I win or you win. It's everybody can win, which is so cool.
Because it's not like your reader reads one book.
Exactly. And if I like your book, I'm going to recommend it to someone, and if you like someone else, you're going to recommend them to your readers. And, I mean, I love that.
Exactly. And I make recommendations to my readers of books that I've read and loved all the time, because, I want them to share in that as well. And I know that they'll enjoy it. If they like my work, I know they'll like somebody else's that I've read.
Exactly. So, that's cool. That's very cool. So your first book that really opened your eyes was a remake of Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
And I saw that you have a Mr. Darcy series.
I sure do.
Is it a takeoff on Pride and Prejudice, or
it is in a way?
Ish?
So
okay.
My shameful secret is that I'm a reality TV watcher. And as I was watching The Bachelor, I had an idea.
My daughter loves that show.
Really? Okay. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I do too. But so as I was watching it, I had an idea whereby The Bachelor could actually be a man who's very much like Mr. Darcy. So that's how I came up with the idea. I call it The Bachelor Meets Pride and Prejudice. And that's where I came up with my Love Manor series, which starts with dating Mr. Darcy. And it's a story of an American woman from Houston, which actually, incidentally, is where I have lived. She enters a reality TV show, a dating show, where the contestants are all dating this guy who's posing as Mr. Darcy. And it's set in modern day, obviously. It's a reality TV show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Time. But she's not there for love. She's there because she wants to further her career. She and her friend have an activewear line, and they're trying to get eyes on it, basically.
Okay.
Along comes Sebastian Huntington Ross, who is a bona fide British lord, with a stately manor home and everything. And he is very, very much inspired by a certain Mr. Darcy in his character, but he's a little bit more playful and obviously modern. They don't like each other to start with, but things evolve during the filming.
Awesome.
It was so fun to write. And I
would imagine.
I was writing another book at the time, and this just kept in my head saying, write me.
Yeah.
So I abandoned the other book, which I've now since written and published. But this was during our first lockdown that I actually, so 2 years ago, and I sat down to write. And it just flowed, and I loved it. And it's one of my favorite books, actually. But I do love Pride and Prejudice. So
yeah, it's a classic for a reason, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the first chick lit novel, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I love the all the different remakes of it. There's some super clever ones that
there are some very clever ones.
They're a lot of fun to read. That was in the book club. That was one of our first books that we read, was Pride and Prejudice, Pride and Prejudice. And then we read one of the retellings of it.
Oh, which one did you read?
Sonali Dev's Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have read Sonali Dev. Yeah.
They're fun. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think Mr. Darcy just has such a wide appeal, and but it's slightly daunting to take it on. And I had an historical romance writer check my details, because there's costuming in the story, and she checked it and said that I'd researched it obviously as well, but I had no idea how precise some readers can be with, like, apparently I have a funny scene with bloomers, and apparently women in the year that Pride and Prejudice was published didn't wear bloomers. They didn't come in to fashion for like another 25 years or more. Yes, I had a reviewer tell me on no uncertain terms I was quite inaccurate. So
and it's fiction, right?
Yeah. I didn't actually reply.
Yeah.
I just thought, right,
so
okay,
funny.
if I write this anything like this again, I will make sure I remember that. No bloomers in 1812, 1813.
There you go. Yeah. I was reading on Facebook. Well, I was scrolling through Facebook this morning, and I saw an author had posted this meme that said that an author got a review on a book, and the review said, it's almost like the author was making it up as they went along.
I love that.
I hate to tell you.
Let me think. Yeah.
I thought, oh, how funny.
Well, if it was nonfiction, then that would be
no, it was a fiction book, apparently. But yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Well, the making up as you go along is the best part for us writers. So.
Exactly. So when you do your books, do you do an outline, or do you just kind of brain dump the whole thing? And
yeah, I do. I do a very high level outline. I would love to be a serious plotter, but I'm not. I'm much more of a pantser. So what I will have is I will have my concept, my tropes, my ultimate goal, probably a few hurdles, and quite possibly a dark moment. And the rest of it just happens as I go. And so I've really got to start writing it before I realize things. And my characters develop in my head as I write.
That makes sense.
I started out writing quite in-depth character analyses before I would write. And then I would find that I would just change them as I went anyway. So
interesting.
having some basics. At the moment, I'm writing a fourth book in a series. So I've got like a cheat sheet on anything that this particular character has done or said in the past, how I've described her, etc. Yeah, so I've got those things. But if I'm starting completely fresh with a new book, then it very much develops as I go.
That's so fun. It's so fun to hear how every author does it a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I would call myself a plotster. Like, you know, they talk about plotting or I'm a plotster.
Yeah. I love that.
No, it is.
I think that's fun.
And some people who have no idea where they're going, that scares me. Like I got to have a general impression.
Exactly.
With the book.
Now you write romantic comedies for the most part, right? Okay. Yes. And so are there certain elements in a romantic comedy that kind of need to be in there to be a romantic comedy?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So there needs to be a happy ever after or happy for now. So it needs to end with a happy ending.
Okay.
And I want to do that with my books anyway, because that is uplifting to me. And that makes me feel satisfied. My husband is the other end of the extreme. He gets very upset if we watch a movie or something together and it ends happily. He's really put out. So it's so polar opposites on that front. But so it needs to have that. You need to have if you're developing a romance, you need to have a certain amount of time developing the emotional arc between the two main characters.
Okay.
I have only written a couple of books that have the male and female point of view. Most of my titles are written entirely from the female point of view only. Yeah, so it's a little bit harder to develop the depth of that connection between the two characters because you don't see his point of view. You don't see what's going on in his head.
Right.
But it also means I've got license for her to think things that are maybe not necessarily true.
And it lets the reader think those things with her.
Exactly. So also there needs to be a moment where I think I called it the dark moment before, where things go wrong and it looks a little bit hopeless before they then get back together again. So it's that boy meets girl, boy breaks up with girl, boy and girl get back together. It's that kind of format.
Yeah. Okay. Fun.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And where do you go ahead? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, for my stories, friendship is a very large element. So I usually write, the Darcy books are different. They follow the same couple across 3 books.
Yeah.
But most of my books are based on a friendship group of 3 or 4 friends. And each book is, in effect, a standalone novel.
Of each of the different friend. Yeah.
Exactly. So I have people who will start reading book 3, for example, and then go back and read books 1 and 2, and you don't need to read them in order. And I get told a lot by readers, either in reviews or they email me or on social media or whatever. They love my friendships and they love the way my friends are very real, but also very supportive of one another. And
that's awesome.
So that's a key element for me. That's not necessarily
what a cool thing to be able to create that, though, to create these genuine friendships, I guess, that people can resonate with.
It is that's absolutely
pretty awesome. Yeah,
I think that's because I don't come from reading romance as my background. I come from reading humorous women's fiction, chick lit. And friendships are always important in those books. Well, at least the ones I've read.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So where do you tend to get your inspiration for your stories?
Reality TV.
That's awesome.
I told you about the Darcy books, was The Bachelor. I also have a series of books that start with one last first date. That's book one. Then it's 2 last first dates, 3 last first dates, and I'll give you points if you can work out where the 4th book.
I'm going to go on a limb here and say 4.
Yeah. 4 last first dates, exactly. Anyway, I was watching a TV show called Married at First Sight. I don't know whether you have that, but it's big in Australia.
I'm not sure.
And we get it. Yeah, I think there's an American version, but anyway, it's a couples who meet at the altar for the very first time. These alleged experts match them, and then they meet on their wedding day, and it's complete voyeurism. Love it. Addicted. Like, it's wonderful when the stories work out, but a lot of them don't. And it's quite addictive TV. Anyway, I was watching that. So watching that some years ago, and I thought that would be a great premise for a book, meeting your groom on your wedding day. But clearly that idea was taken. So I was thinking, what about having a group of women who are in their late 20s, where I was in my late 20s, thinking like, you know what, I'm nearly 30. What have I done with my life? I don't have the man, the family, maybe I've got the career, but not much else. So you get to, I think a lot of women, maybe a lot of men, get to the point where they think, I've had enough of dating. I just want to meet the guy. I just want to meet the one. And that's what these women do on a beach in the very first chapter of One Last First Date. They're on a beach in Auckland in New Zealand. And they've possibly had a little bit too much Chardonnay, and they make a dating pact that they're going to get serious. They're not going to just date around. It's not a numbers game anymore. It's the next guy I date is going to be the one I marry. And that's the dating pact. And each book follows a different friend's
one of the
story.
different friends. Oh, how funny.
Yeah. And I loved that concept. I loved it so much that I continued it in a spin-off series.
Oh,
which
fun.
is called High Tea. So that's Cozy Cottage Cafe, because it's all based around a cafe. And High Tea is actually the kind of the higher end cafe next door, where they do the full meal and tea and champagne and things. So there's 3 more books.
Oh, fun.
And that one's no more bad dates, no more terrible dates, and then no more horrible dates. So
and so you get to kind of follow these other people that you met in the first series in and out a little bit.
It's a whole world based around Cozy Cottage and cake. There's a lot of cake. You will want to eat cake as you read these books. I apologize now to your waistline.
That's so awesome. I love
each character has their favorite cake, you see, and I talk about it. And I've had reviewers say, all I want to do now is eat cake.
That's so funny. So do you put recipes in?
Actually, no. I've had people say that I should do that, but I'm so busy writing the fiction that I haven't got to that point.
Okay.
No, I've got to stop thinking about it, because it's making me hungry.
That's fun. So are you traditionally published, or are you self-published?
No, I am 100% independently published.
That is amazing. I love it.
Yeah, well,
that seems to be the trend for romance these days, but
I've had conversations with publishers, but what I like is I like to be in control of everything. I like to choose my covers. I like to work out what I want to write, when I want to write it. And also, I don't know, unless you're with one of the big 5, then I think it's just much harder, and you've got to do a lot of your own promotion. And
you do anyway.
You do anyway. So and I've got this network, as I was saying before, of all these amazing, mainly women authors who we just help each other.
You promote each other's.
Exactly. Because we all write very similar things, and I know they write quality work, so
easy to promote them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. How fun. So let's see, you mentioned earlier that a couple of your books are set in New Zealand. Do you have any that are set anywhere else, or are they mostly New Zealand?
I've got actually 10 books set in New Zealand.
Okay.
And my current series, which is called It's Complicated, I'm currently writing the 4th book in that series. Okay. Those books will start with Never Fall for Your. So the first one is Never Fall for the backup guy. Then there's Never Fall for Your enemy. And right now, the most recent release is Never Fall for Your fake fiance.
Right. That one was out fairly recently, right?
Yeah, that came out on February the 5th.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm currently writing the 4th book in that series, which is Never Fall for Your One That Got Away.
Oh, you have really good titles. I
Thank
enjoy
you.
your titles.
I have some themes, you might notice. I try to make the titles all fit.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the reason I didn't do 5 last first dates in that Cozy Cottage series was because it felt a little cumbersome for someone to go on 5 last first dates. I thought that's not being very picky.
That's not really, yeah, exactly.
No, it doesn't fit the concept. So when I did the spin-off, I started the nomenclature again. I started with the No More Bad Dates, so which has a different kind of ring to it. So
yeah.
So getting back to your question, what was your question about the
your settings?
Oh, my set. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's okay.
Okay. I was thinking about cake again.
It's easy too.
It's easy, absolutely. So the current series, the It's Complicated series, is set in London.
Okay.
So that's because it's a spin-off from the Darcy series.
Oh, okay.
So the Darcy series is called Love Manor, and they started in the States with the filming, and then the filming of the reality TV show moved to his manor home, which is in Britain.
Okay.
And then Never Fall for Your Backup Guy, the first book in the spin-off series, is about Mr. Darcy's sister.
Oh, okay.
So
that's another spin-off. Okay, I love that.
That's another spin-off. So she has her own friends, and one of the friends was actually a contestant on the show.
Oh.
So it's all kind of interrelated, and I love that. It feels like I'm visiting old friends.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure readers love that when they get to see their old friends again and
exactly and see the stories progressing. So yeah, so that they're all set in London. So I'm writing it in when it's written, when the character is a British. So there's 4 stories, 3 of them are British. Then I write in British English. Okay. And I'm getting reviews at the moment that are saying, there are so many expressions I don't know from American reviewers. So I apologize for that.
It expands our repertoire of, vocabulary words.
Yeah, well, somebody did suggest the other day that maybe I put a glossary of terms in the back of the book. That's probably a good idea, but then I wouldn't know which ones that people would
do and don't
understand.
know. Yeah.
And I don't want to go and tell people how to suck eggs. So yeah. I'm sorry, that's a dog bark.
I remember in the Harry Potter series, I think the first time I read it, it was the UK version. And then since then, I've read the English, the Americanized version of it. And I liked the other one better because you did get all of the UK isms, I guess, the jumpers and the happy Christmases. And I liked that better. So.
No, well, it probably feels more authentic.
Yeah. And we don't have to Americanize everything.
No, that's true. That said, I do I use American, Americans use the double quote, when someone's speaking for dialogue. Parentheses, so I use that to be consistent. And in fact, now when I read a book that's written in British English and they use just the single, it feels odd to me. I'm like, is someone talking? I can't tell.
Yeah. Are they quoting someone else? Or yeah.
So
interesting, huh? I didn't realize that was a thing because I've noticed that, but I didn't understand it, I guess. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So where where you put a question marks and it's all quite different. And being a New Zealander, we very much we're developing our own version of English. Obviously, I have a New Zealand accent, but the written word as well. But we do take more after the British English,
right?
I guess because that's more of our origins. We're a much younger country than the US is.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Interesting. So what are you working on now? You were saying that you're working on that. It's complicated, number 4, right?
It's complicated, number 4. Never Fall for Your One That Got Away.
Okay.
And that again is set in London. It's a second chance at love trope. And it's all about Tabitha Green, who is one of the 4 friends at the beginning of the series. Tabitha's been having a bit of a rough time. And in the last book, Never Fall for Your Fake Fiance, she started to come right.
Okay.
And right at the end of that book, something happens with her that you'll have to read about.
I look forward to it.
Which
Yes.
sparks the fourth book, which
okay.
is what I'm writing now. So that's coming out the end of May 31st.
Awesome.
And I've got some great ideas. My husband helped me plot this one, which is he does that every now and then. I've got a critique partner who is amazing, and she actually lives not too far from me, and we meet at a cafe kind of halfway between where we live, and sometimes brainstorm. And she and I did some work on this, but then I came home and I was saying to my husband, it's not quite working. He was like, I know what you need to do. And of course his first idea was crazy, but his second and third ideas were really good. So
that's fun.
Yeah,
that's cool to be able to have him be part of the process sometimes.
Yes, because he's not my target audience.
Exactly.
He doesn't read my books, but if I'm stuck on something, let's say, how would a guy react to this? I can ask him and he'll go, blah, blah, blah. So he's good with that.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay. So do you just write one series at a time?
I do. Okay. Absolutely. I find I get so immersed in it, and I think about it all the time. Like when I'm writing a book, if I'm in the car, I don't have music on or the radio. I don't listen to podcasts. I do nothing. I'm so in my head about it.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite liberating once I finished a book to go, oh, I can listen to a song. I can listen to someone else's audiobook now.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if you have like a 4-book series, how long would it take for you to write them all? I mean, I'm assuming you kind of go back to back with them.
I do. I apologize for my dog who keeps growling at me. She wants her mid-morning treat. So, so I typically try and release 4 books a year, and this is a 4-book series. I'm actually going to be ahead of myself on this one because the first book came out in August. So Never Fall for Your Backup Guy came out in August last year, and the 4th book is coming out in May. All going to plan, and assuming I don't contract anything.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah, I've got a glass desk, so I'm touching glass here. But typically 4 books will take me a year in total because it's not just the writing. So I'll do a first draft, then I do a second draft. My critique partner will read through it, do a third draft. Then there's the editing, there's the proofreading. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. Yeah. And so when that one's off to like the editors or the whatevers, are you writing the next one already, or do you wait?
I would like to say I am, but usually I'm seeing friends, I'm watching reality TV,
getting inspired for the next series.
Exactly. Who knows what
doing research,
I haven't written anything about housewives, so
Okay.
Anyway, I tend to have a break, and I tend to read other things, but I've always got ideas in my head, and I have a list as long as a football field,
I bet,
of ideas. So
nice.
I just wait for inspiration to hit, and it does. It totally hits because this is my passion.
Awesome.
I can't imagine not doing this, even when I'm in a mobility scooter. Do you know what I mean? Which hopefully won't happen, but I can't imagine not having characters popping up in my head and demanding stories.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. So I think that was all I had for you. My goodness, that was perfect.
Oh, this has been fun. Thank you.
Been fun. Thank you for joining me today. I completely appreciate figuring out the whole 18-hour time difference. And
I know it's not easy. I'm in your tomorrow. So hello from the future.
That is mind-boggling.
I know. Yeah,
and it's about that one.
Yeah, it is tricky, but we've made it work, so that's great.
Thanks for joining me today on the Literary Escapes podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode and maybe would like some more Literary Escape book recommendations, then come check out the Literary Escape Society. We're a community of travelers who love books, or maybe book lovers who love to travel. Either way, if you need an escape, a literary escape, come join us as we read our way around the world together, one book at a time. Check out the show notes to learn more about the Literary Escape Society. And we'll see you next time on the next episode.